Hey, I'm trying this new thing today and recording this episode live because that's just what I felt like doing this week. And that really ties into what I want to talk about today and kind of what I've been going through recently. I interviewed this dad, Michael Lieben. His episode came out a couple weeks ago, and he's the host of a podcast called Bereaved But Still Me. And I've been thinking about that title ever since I first heard of it a couple months ago, because I feel like I don't know who I am. And I really started to sharply feel that after Orion died. And I have been asking myself that question ever since, because I'm trying to figure out how to keep living without him here, and realizing that I don't want to do that the hard way. And the hard way for me means something else than it does for you listening, because we're all so individual and unique. And it feels like the more that I'm trying to learn about who I am, the less I know. And I recently realized that it takes not only a self-awareness to try and figure out who you are, but it takes a kind of radical honesty as well. Because who you are may not be who you were raised to be, or it may not be what you think is termed as normal in society. And so that can be scary if who you are feels like somebody that's unrealistic, somebody that can't really exist in the world in their natural state. I've been reading this book recently for fun. It's a fictional book. It's called The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. It's about a character who feels like she needs to experience everything in life, and she's afraid that she's never going to make it out of her small town in France in the 1700s. And so she makes a deal with a god. It's disputable whether or not it's the devil. And he grants her a mortal life, but nobody remembers her. The minute that she disappears from somebody's sight, like they turn a corner or a door shuts, they have no recollection of her. And so she lives for centuries, but essentially as a ghost, never leaving a mark, never making any impression on anybody that she meets. And throughout the book, it talks about how hard it is for her to constantly be starting fresh, to constantly have to figure out a new way to navigate when she's reintroducing herself, when she's not able to hold on to anything long term. And when I was reading the book, my thought was, that must be so incredible that she doesn't have to worry about how to earn a living or afford a house or pay bills. She just lives. She just day to day does what she needs to survive that day, be that she steals stuff to get some money or get new clothes or get food, and spends all her time just experiencing life, going places, seeing things, traveling all the time. And it's funny that it didn't even matter to me that she's never remembered, that at the end of her life she won't be memorialized anywhere. Nobody will reminisce about her and their interactions with her. And that's when I started to think about what is like really important to me? And that question's different for everybody, but I think for me, what's really important is having absolute freedom to do whatever I want, whenever I want. And that doesn't mean that I don't want to do anything. Like I just want to get to sit on the couch and eat bonbons all day. It means that when I don't feel like recording this podcast, I don't want to force myself to do it anyway. When I don't feel inspired to share on Instagram, I don't want to guilt myself that I'm messing up my marketing strategy for the Selfish Griever by not posting consistently. It means that yesterday, after I dropped Maverick off at school, and I randomly felt like, you know what, I want to clean up the backyard. That back patio really needs a good sweeping after a storm that we had like months ago. That up until yesterday, every time I looked out at my backyard, I thought, I don't want to mess with that. It needs to get cleaned and it's going to be such a pain. And then yesterday morning, randomly, it didn't feel like a pain anymore. It felt like something I actually wanted to do. And so I went outside and I did it. I spent probably about an hour. I could have been working on this podcast, but instead I spent an hour out in my yard cleaning. And then lo and behold, yesterday afternoon, unbeknownst to me, it rained, like a big rain. And so the last vestiges of dirt that were left on my patio after I had swept were washed away. And that wouldn't have happened had I not been out there yesterday morning cleaning it. And I guess that's, to me, the amazing part about the freedom. When you just do the things that you feel like doing in that moment, and then can witness the ways that those ended up being meant to be in an unplanned way, in like a magical way. That kind of stuff is what lights me up and like makes it worth still having to be here every day. But as soon as I admit that, my logical brain is telling me, well, that's ridiculous. How are you going to work a job and only do it when you feel like doing it? How do you release a podcast on a twice weekly schedule if you're only doing it when you feel like doing it? What if you don't feel like doing it for a week? Then what are you going to do? And it starts to interject all these questions and roadblocks and reasons logically why this is never going to work. And it makes me feel afraid of trying to do things the way that feel best to me, because they're not the ways that are generally accepted by society as the path to success. And the more that I think about it, and the more that I even just talk to friends about things that make them excited, I realize how different all of us are. I have this friend, and she loves cleaning house. And she even loves cleaning other people's houses. She's like, it just makes me feel so good. It's way better than cleaning my own house because I'm just making somebody else's space beautiful. And I think that's amazing that she found something that she enjoys that is not, I think, a commonly popular activity, and is something that I would never want to be doing. I have another friend who loves to organize charity events and fundraise money, and that lights her up, and that does not light me up. That gives me anxiety to think about asking people to give me money to support something. I mean, I don't even like asking for patrons for this podcast that I work on. And when I think about it from those terms, it just makes me think wow, what if all of us were out there just doing what actually made us happy? And cosmically, are we all so diverse that there are enough of us to make sure that everything's taken care of, even if all we simply did was worry about doing what made us feel best? And even the fact that the way you can figure that out is so unique to everybody. I mean, for me, it's been diving into spirituality it's been trying to work on my awareness of other concepts like neuroscience and neuroplasticity and manifesting and astrology and human design. All these different elements that I've cherry-picked different pieces from to create this unique understanding that makes sense specifically to me to help understand myself. And other people can just try different activities and realize this is what makes me happy. And it makes me sad to think about how much of my life I spent trying to be something else, trying to fit into a mold that I thought was the way I had to be in order to be successful, in order to be happy, in order to be recognized as somebody who's doing something of value. It makes me think about how many people I know that I wonder if they're really doing things that make them happy. If they even know what makes them happy. Because I definitely didn't know this about this insight into freedom meaning so much to me. I think if I look back over my life, I realize that's not something that just cropped up after Orion died. It's something that I always felt, and I felt ashamed of. It made me think that I was lazy, that I wasn't dedicated enough, that I didn't have the kind of commitment necessary to really do things and follow them through and make them a success, because I wasn't willing to just put my nose to the grindstone and keep working at it every single day. Keep struggling all the time. Keep pushing, keep persevering. I remember when I was younger and I used to wish that I had this fast forward button that I could just end up at the end of my life. And everything would already have been figured out for me. I would have memories of what had happened, but that I didn't have to be consciously aware, because it felt so overwhelming to always be trying to figure it out, to always try and know the answer of what am I supposed to do next, what's meant for me, and feeling like everything was so hard all the time. And then the unimaginable happened and Orion died in an accident. And I didn't have any more energy to keep forcing everything. And I couldn't care about anything. And for a long time I told myself that just stopping everything and being home most of the time and just barely taking care of Maverick was just this luxury I was being afforded because I was in immediate grief. I was felt like this clock was ticking all the time when my time was running out and I was going to be expected to go back to normal. But the more that I try to work on myself and trying to find my way, the more it makes me want to create my own version of normal. And also, I want to teach Maverick how to navigate his own version of normal. When I look at him, he's so incredible. His mind is like a steel trap, and he picks up stuff so quickly, and he has this understanding of things that just blows me away all the time. And he's so happy, and he's so affectionate. He's just genuinely friendly, and he loves people. And it kills me to think that he maybe someday could feel like some parts of him were not the way that he's supposed to be. That someday he might try to mute some of those so that he fits in better, so that he can be part of society in a quote unquote normal way, because he's so amazing the way that he is now. And it's astounding to me, like, how clearly I can see that when I'm looking at him, and yet how hard it is for me to see that in myself when I'm looking at me, when I'm letting myself judge myself for not doing things the way that I should be doing them, the way that I always did them before, the way that I see other people doing them. So I'm trying this new thing where instead of writing a to-do list every day, I'm writing a what do I want to do today list. And then I'm trying to get as many of those things done as I can. And it's kind of a grand experiment to see, like, does it really make my life fall apart the way that my ego tells me that it will? That it's impossible to be productive, to be efficient, to be on task if I'm just letting my preferences rule me every day. And somebody said to me recently, life is short. And all of us have heard that saying. I don't know, for me lately, life hasn't felt very short. It's felt incredibly long and painful. And like, I still have so much more to go. And I think part of that reason is because I've been putting all this pressure on myself to figure it out, to know the answers, to rush, to try and get to the next place, to get to this place of, like, eureka, I figured it out. Now I can be happy. Now I can be less stressed. And I don't want to do that anymore. I don't want to be like that. I want to figure out how to be happy every day in whatever way is most authentic to me. And then maybe it wouldn't feel like everything was just dragging on. And maybe I wouldn't be spending all my days trying to figure out how do I get to this futuristic utopia that doesn't really exist because the future's not here. And I just share this because I want you to know that if you feel like you're struggling all the time and that it's always hard, like, maybe try and really figure out what lights you up, what is really truly important to you. And the absolute beauty about that is that you don't have to know how to figure that out. All you need to do is set the intention that you want to find out what really makes you happy, and the universe will start putting those things in front of you, either in the form of stuff for you to try or information for you to read, learn, absorb that will help you figure out that answer. And so I don't need to have the roadmap for you on how to do that, because it's going to be your own path that'll be likely different than mine. And all you have to do is simply want it. And then it'll unfold. It'll come to you. It will work itself out. Which kind of makes me feel like I'm unnecessary here, because I can't give you steps on what to do. All I can tell you is that I'm feeling that. And I don't want to feel that way anymore. And so I am working on figuring it out. And I think everybody can figure that out for themselves and then follow it. And that it would be really beautiful if we all did.